Well, the big story today, on the day that the Prime Minister announced that the lockdown was being extended by almost another 3 weeks to the 3rd of May, are these pictures that emerged from Bandra station in Mumbai this evening, where thousands of migrant labourers who've been stuck in Mumbai because they just had no way to get home when the lockdown was enforced 3 weeks ago. They were all hoping to be able to board trains today to be able to go back to their villages. That's because they had expected that the lockdown would perhaps end today. I believe that some local channels also reported that trains might resume and take them home. But there was no such announcement to that effect today. And as a result, they were agitated, they were protesting, they were upset. And that ended up with the police lathi charging them. This is exactly the opposite of what social distancing should be. But please remember, these people are desperate, they are hungry, they don't have wages, they don't have food and basic amenities. And that is why they reacted in the way that they did. Let's take a look at some of their reactions.
कलकत्ता गए हैं, हम लोग काम करता है इधर बिल्डिंग लाइन में बिल्डिंग में करता है, प्लास्टर का, वो ब्रांच का, कलर का, खाने का भी हम लोग का पेट में खाना भी नहीं है। अभी क्या कर सकते हैं बोलो? अब जाएगा किधर, गांव कैसे जाएगा, हम लोग को समझ भी नहीं आता।
अब खाना नहीं मिल रहा है, कहाँ रह रहे हैं?
इधर ब्रिज मिस होता है साहब, ब्रिज मिस होता है साहब। अभी क्या कर सकते हैं? घर वाला हम लोग को निकाल दिया, बोले तुम लोग भाड़ा उड़ा नहीं देगा, अभी क्या कर सकता है? अभी तुम लोग जाओ, हम लोग को निकाल दिया, अभी ब्रिज में रहता हूँ। कभी खाना मिलता है टाइम से, नहीं मिलता है साहब, क्या कर सकते हैं बोलो? क्या बोलेगा कि 14 को खुलेगा, फिर बोलता है कि 30 को खुलेगा, तो हम लोग क्या खाएगा साहब बोलो? हम लोग तो भूखा में मर जाएगा ऐसा।
हम कैंटीन का काम करते हैं यहाँ पे, शादी पार्टी।
तो इतने दिन से कहाँ रह रहे हैं, क्या खा रहे हैं?
हम यहाँ पे ब्रिज पे रह रहे, हम लोग ब्रिज पे रह रहे, जो मिल रहा वही खाए हम लोग।
तो आज आप स्टेशन गए थे, कहाँ जाना था आपको?
हम लोग को अजमेर जाना था।
आप अन्य राज्यों से यहाँ आए हुए हैं, रहो यहाँ, हमारे साथ रहो। एक संकट है, चुनौती है, चुनौती का सामना हम सारे मिलकर करेंगे। आप क्यों डरते हो? कोई घर जाने की आवश्यकता नहीं, और हमें कोई खुशी नहीं हो रही कि आपको घर में लॉक करके रखे। ये अपना ही देश है, और आप जैसे आप घर जाना चाहते हो, आप मेरे राज्य में हो, महाराष्ट्र में हो, आप सुरक्षित हो, आपको कोई चिंता करने की आवश्यकता नहीं है। और जिस दिन लॉकडाउन खुलेगा तो मैं ही नहीं, पूरे केंद्र सरकार भी आपकी व्यवस्था करेगी। तो अब समय है चुनौती का सामना करने का, मुकाबला करने के लिए कोई हिंदुस्तानी पीछे नहीं हटता। आप हिंदुस्तानी हो, कोई डरने की बात नहीं है।
Well, my colleague Saurabh Gupta has been covering that story in Mumbai and joins us live now from there. Saurabh, what is the latest from there? Because it's not going to be the last such incidents. I see on online reports of some hundreds of workers also gathering in Surat today. So, what more are authorities saying in Mumbai?
Well, Nidhi, the place I'm coming to you live from was the site of a protest just about 4 hours ago. And in fact, now it's been cleared out. But you can see in the corner there, those are the slums that these people came out of. Who are they? They are workers who stay in the slums, many of them saying on record that they've been asked to leave their homes. Why have they been asked to leave their homes? Well, because they cannot pay rent, they have no jobs. Now, in this scenario, it's not a question of food, because the food is being distributed here. Food is coming. But the point is that they don't have a livelihood, they don't know what to do, and they want to go home. This is a desperate, emotional decision they've made. It's not a rational one. And that's why perhaps they needed that route. They expected they could go home, but they weren't able to go. The police asked them to go back in. They didn't listen. There had to be a lathi charge. The police say they were left with no choice but to use force, because this is, after all, a public health emergency. The police say that they appealed to these protesters to go back in, but the protesters were desperate. So it was just a situation that emerged that had to be controlled, and that is why the police say they had to lathi charge at that time, because otherwise it was going to be a public health hazard. Now, the MLA, the former MLA came, he's told us that food is being given. The police were using drones to go into that slum there and then make announcements. Baba Siddiqui made appeals for people to remain calm. The police is here now. But this is something that, like you mentioned, is not unique to Mumbai. It's happened in Surat, in Gujarat. It's happened once earlier. It's happened once now. So these are migrant workers who desperately want to go home. The Chief Minister has made an appeal to them to stay, that they will be taken care of. There are camps for them. There will be food for them. but the problem is who can convince them that there is a future beyond the lockdown. They're taking emotional, irrational decisions is what top police sources are saying. They're saying that we tried to counsel them now. We'll send that drone in again. We'll send people in to talk to them, to calm them down, to tell them they can stay here. And then perhaps we will look at what other problems they have. But one of the problems is, in fact, something that I heard in a soundbite also, that they were also, some of them were asked to leave their homes and they were leaving anyways because they thought they would have a train to go. So this is the situation. It's now clear, but this is clearly not a one-off incident as one sees it.
Worryingly so, in fact. Saurabh, thanks for joining us there, and let's hope that there is a way the government can find to actually either take them home or to ensure that they have the right facilities, food and whatever they need wherever they are at the moment, because that really is the biggest problem. Now, moving on to what the Prime Minister said. Now, all of this has happened hours after Mr. Modi announced this morning in his 10 a.m. address that the entire lockdown was being extended to the 3rd of May. However, he has left a small window open for possible relaxations. What he has said is that it will be an extremely strict lockdown till the 20th of April. And after that, an assessment will be made of every district in the country, every place in the country by local level officials, the police, etc. And those districts that have little or no cases of the coronavirus, they may see some relaxations, but otherwise the rest of the country will have to wait until the 3rd of May at the very least.
कोरोना जिस तरह फैल रहा है उसने विश्व भर में हेल्थ एक्सपर्ट्स को और सरकारों को और ज्यादा सतर्क कर दिया है। सारे सुझावों को ध्यान में रखते हुए ये तय किया गया है कि भारत में लॉकडाउन को अब 3 मई तक और बढ़ाना पड़ेगा। 20 अप्रैल तक हर कस्बे, हर थाने, हर जिले, हर राज्य को बड़ी बारीकी से परखा जाएगा। वहां लॉकडाउन का कितना पालन हो रहा है, उस क्षेत्र ने कोरोना से खुद को कितना बचाया है, इसका मूल्यांकन लगातार किया जाएगा। जो क्षेत्र इस अग्नि परीक्षा में सफल होंगे, जो अपने यहां हॉटस्पॉट नहीं बढ़ने देंगे और जिनके हॉटस्पॉट में बदलने की आशंका भी कम होगी, वहां पर 20 अप्रैल से कुछ जरूरी गतिविधियों की अनुमति, छूटछाट दी जा सकती है। लेकिन याद रखिए, ये अनुमति सशर्त होगी। बाहर निकलने के नियम बहुत सख्त होंगे। लॉकडाउन के नियम अगर टूटते हैं और कोरोना का पैर हमारे इलाके में पड़ता है, तो सारी अनुमति तुरंत वापस ले ली जाएगी। और इसलिए न खुद कोई लापरवाही करनी है और न ही किसी और को लापरवाही करने देना है।
Well, let's take a look at the latest data from the Health Ministry now. And what we do know is that currently the country has 10,815 cases of coronavirus that have been recorded. That is ahead of this new version of the lockdown. 1,463 new cases have been recorded in just the last 24 hours, which is the single biggest spike in the course of one day. There were 29 deaths in the last 24 hours, but that's less than the 51 people who died in that spike that was seen yesterday on Monday. So that's what the latest figures look like. Now, how do states stack up on the 21st day of the lockdown? You can see there that Maharashtra has the most cases, 2,337. It also has the most deaths with a mortality rate of 6.8%, which is much higher than the national average of 3.3%. Delhi and Tamil Nadu are the two other states with over 1,000 cases, but their mortality rates are much lower than the national average. And on this list, you can see that Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat also have a mortality rate higher than this national average of 3.3%. Notably, Kerala, which a month ago had among the most cases, is now down to the 10th position, having controlled the spread of the coronavirus in the last couple of weeks. We will be joined a little later on this program by Kerala's Finance Minister Thomas Isaac on just how Kerala managed to do that. Now, one of the big concerns that has emerged as a result of this extended lockdown is what it is going to do to India's economy. Remember, our growth rate was already not that great, and the projections now actually look pretty grim and pretty dire. The IMF today said that it's projecting a growth rate of just 1.9% for India this year. And that has come after the World Bank has already said they're looking at between 1.5 to 2.8%. You have the Asian Development Bank, which is talking about India's growth rate just marginally higher at 4%, S&P at 3.5%, Moody's also slashing India's growth rate from 5.3 to 2.5%. And Barclays Bank today also came out with its growth forecast for India, saying it would be at 0% for 2020. As low as 0% is entirely possible. So that is what the economic impact possibly looks like. And of course, it's not an easy decision for the government, which has to balance out health concerns with economic concerns. The question is, can India afford a prolonged lockdown, a complete and total lockdown in the way that has been announced at the moment? Dr. V.K. Paul, member of the Niti Aayog, joining us this evening, chairman of the Board of Governors of the Medical Council of India as well. Sameer Saran, the president of the Observer Research Foundation, joining us. Shobna Kamineni, the former president of the CII, is with us. She's the executive vice chairperson of the Apollo Hospitals Group. We'll also be joined by Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, the executive chairperson of Biocon from Bangalore in just a bit. Dr. V.K. Paul, to you first. A very tough decision clearly for the government to make. It's not an easy choice to have to make choosing between lives and livelihoods. But very simply, sir, can India and India's economy afford a complete lockdown for much longer than this?
Well, as you look at the strategy that the Honorable Prime Minister has put forth, there are two elements to it. There is a decision that for the time being, the lockdown continues, and this also emanates from the very clear guidance that he received from the state chief ministers and state governments, and also the feedback coming from the ground. At the same time, you are absolutely right that lockdowns cannot go on, especially nationwide lockdown cannot go on forever, and a window for opening up the lockdown in a systematic manner based on certain principles has also been enunciated by the Prime Minister today. So today, the decision should be seen as a dual decision. There is a way forward in terms of cutting down the transmission chain of the virus, for which it is thought that more time would be useful to keep India safe. At the same time, the principles defining de-escalation of the lockdown have also been defined. This is a well thought out strategy, and at the moment this is in the best interest of India, and this is a good balance of competing priorities of lives and livelihoods.
Dr. Paul, could I ask you what the Niti Aayog's assessment is of how the next 20 days could actually help us in terms of flattening the curve? What advice you're getting, from all the doctors advising the government and the Niti Aayog itself?
Well, we believe that as a result of the lockdown so far, the doubling of cases is now happening every 6 days or so. When we started, we were somewhere around 3 to 4 days. It has moved to 6 days, and this is still early in the course of the impact of lockdown, because there is a lag period between the transmission chain being broken and the ultimate effect in terms of numbers. We believe this will firm up further, and I would anticipate that we should be close to having a doubling rate every 8 to 9 to 10 days. That is a significant flattening of the curve, and that gives us an opportunity to be better prepared and at the same time, think about opening up the spaces where we are in a safe situation. But remember, even where we open, the life is not going to be the same. We all as a society have to be behaving in a manner that makes it difficult for the virus to travel from one individual to the other. And those changes in our lifestyle, in our workplace activity, in our daily lives is going to be very, very important.
Absolutely. I think
and I also want to emphasize right here that protecting our elderly is extremely important, and that principle, that tenet of our approach to addressing the COVID-19 pandemic is also very clearly brought out by the Prime Minister, and I like us to be very, very mindful about this principle.
Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, your reaction to the extension of the lockdown and, the fact that it's clearly putting very severe economic stress as well. There is a concern that in a country like India, the fallout of this economic distress could end up killing as many or more people than the virus itself.
Well, Nidhi, at this point in time, I think this was an absolute correct decision to take, because we have seen a surge in the number of cases that have been reported. And I think we also need to understand that at this point in time, we need to make sure that we are even more prepared before we start lifting and increasing economic activity. Now, I think one of the good, suggestions that has been made and which the government has actually considered is that we need to link economic activity with level of risk. And I think that is also a very good way of calibrated lifting of the lockdown. Now, personally, I believe that, yes, there is a huge economic impact on India. And, there have been many, many forecasts, including the kind of impact that we are facing of almost a loss of 4,000 crores per day, as is being estimated. So it is a huge impact. But nevertheless, I think we do need to tackle this pandemic. I think it would be very premature to lift the lockout right now, or to even, something allowing strong economic activity despite the economic impact. And I think the calibrated approach is the right approach. I really think any hotspot zone should be completely locked down, until it starts showing very, very slow growth and flattening of the curve. The green zones are what need to be watched. And I think the amber zones can also have partial economic activity. But I think all these are being very well thought out. I'm very pleased with the way the government is actually assessing the risk, assessing economic opportunity in terms of relaxing the conditions of the lockdown. And I think we should give it some time before we really get more comfortable. This is really about getting in the zone of comfort and confidence. Right now, the zone of safety that we are in is not at the level it should be. So therefore, I think we were seeing people getting very blasé and complacent about following the social distancing and other lockdown norms.
No, there's absolutely no reason to be complacent. Yeah,
actually emphasized.
Yeah,
that
it's the opposite.
Stringency needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shobna Kamineni, we have heard industry, though, while agreeing that you need lockdown measures in place temporarily, also appealing to the government to do something more financially for industry. Now, small and medium industries in particular are literally crying out for help. They're saying we don't have money to pay basic salaries. The Prime Minister did say in general terms today that no one should be laid off. But the fact is that for a lot of these small companies, it isn't really an option.
That's true, Nidhi. I mean, there is distress. I think Kiran spoke about it. But the first lockdown was truly about, understanding and managing this pandemic. But I can guarantee you that with the number of meetings that we've had as industry bodies, but also the fact that, a lot of the industries now have come and they've actually charted out plans. What is the new normal going to be? I don't think any industry can think that business will go back to what it was before. But I can see that actually the digital companies, you know, the digital first companies are actually doing a better job in terms of coming to this reality. It's the traditional businesses that now are thinking, where will we be? How will we get back? And it's not just the MSMEs, but it's even the large. Sometimes they say the larger you are, the harder you fall. So I think there's a huge level of pain and distress, but we have been thinking about what we're going to do, what tomorrow is going to look like. And I do think the resilience of Indian industry is something that we can take confidence in. There are going to be certain things that will take place in the next few weeks of understanding and what it is we can do. I'm so happy the Prime Minister didn't just open up, because coming from a medical perspective, I know what a disaster that could have been.
Absolutely.
So having said that, no cure. Last thing I'd like to say is that there's no cure. So we have to tame and treat this beast. So what's happening now is that the Prime Minister is really looking at how to tame it. We in industry should do it, but we should also look at how to treat the patients and how to treat our industries.
Can I ask you though, when you talk about, industries and companies having to rethink, what post-corona life will look like, can you sort of expand on that just a bit? I mean, do you think we're going to see more people working from home, more reliance on video conferencing instead of flying in for meetings? What are some of the practical changes you foresee?
Okay. So that's the easy thing that you can see, that more people will work from home, that you're going to have smaller offices. Businesses are going to try and go digital first, especially the retail. But then now we have to think of how supply chains are going to evolve, where manufacturing will start happening. And we have to think about ways that we can actually get the 150 million people that have now been pushed into poverty. Dr. Paul, thank you for Ayushman Bharat. At least they'll get medical treatment. But having said that, what is going to be their livelihood? So I think the bigger challenge is to bring back industries that are labor intensive. I can see healthcare as a big win in terms of giving employment. I'm figuring out more industries, but I think that these are early days yet. The courier services, that's another one that is going to be part of our new normal, and that will employ many people.
All right, Samir Saran, just to get you in on this, when we a lot of people kind of gasped this morning when they heard about the 3rd of May. I can see you smiling, but the fact is, I mean, yesterday night, President Macron in France announced another month-long extension of a full lockdown, pretty much what is a full lockdown in France as well. I mean, the only thing that they're allowed to do, which we aren't, is to exercise outside. Now, Britain is probably going to extend their lockdown by another 3 weeks as well. We have seen, Wuhan's lockdown lasted 76 days. Other countries as well. The counter argument to that, Samir Saran, is that India is not France. India is not the UK. We have complications. We have different challenges. We have a large population that is poor, that depends on daily wages. So do you think, Samir, that the next few weeks will also be critical to evolve that calibrated exit that India may have to just do after the 3rd of May?
No, Nidhi, you are absolutely right, and let me first agree with everything the eminent panelists have said thus far. I think it was quite obvious that we will be extending the lockdown. We had to. I have said it earlier that with our fragile health infrastructure, even a minimum surge will overwhelm us. And the fact is that we are not yet confident. And I know this is my pet peeve, but because we have not been able to test at scale, we are not even sure of the hotspots. We don't even know the zones we need to create as containment zones. And I think in this scenario, to blindly open up or to be casually willing to restart the economy would have been a disaster. The only option for us, under the circumstances, under the number of tests we have done, with the information that we have in hand, was to continue the lockdown. So I think it is a fair and a good decision, and I must compliment the Prime Minister and the Chief Ministers who have put a premium on Indian life, which is not something which is always the case. That being said, I think what we need to do in the next 17, 18 days that we have bought ourselves is to use the time well. I would focus on 3 out of many elements that are required, but let me name just 3 of them. The first, I think it is extremely important to redress and to address the anguish, anxieties and concerns of the vulnerable sections. And we will need to put together a social protection package which goes beyond ration. We will have to look at urban employment guarantee. We will have to look at the migrant workers who have been stranded. We will have to find ways of reaching those who are not covered under various schemes of ours, use our technologies, use our platforms, use our identity programs. When will we be able to fully make the rich use of this infrastructure that we have created? This should be that time. And so that should be the first thing. Create a social protection framework. Because we are not going to be in a post-COVID world soon. We are going to have to live in a corona world for a long time. It could be 12 months, it could be 18 months. So we will have to create alternate ways of social protection, and this is the time to do it. That's my first idea. And I think in the next 3 weeks, we should start beginning to see a plan emerge. And I hope the industry and government and think tanks and academia work together to put this in place. The second, what we have to do is protect some of the critical supply chains. And I think we need to be far more, in some sense, nuanced in what we stop and what we don't. For example, if you were to only allow essential goods to be transported across the country, you might strain the commercials of that transportation. So you might have to think about some form of non-essential transfers as well to make the freight infrastructure worthwhile and viable. So we'll have to be a little more nuanced in what we call essential and non-essential, and allow some movement of goods to take place. And the third point and the final point is that we have bought ourselves 18 days, test more.
Yes.
I know it's easier said than done. I know we are waiting for testing kits, but the more we test, the more green zones that someone mentioned can be created. I think containment is a defensive strategy which we have to adopt because we don't know the nature of this beast that exists within us. But the more we test, the more we will be able to create these zones where some amount of activity can be reignited, and we can eventually, hopefully in the next few months, move towards certain trade zones, certain courier zones, certain industrial zones where more economic activity can be. I think these are
all important and very good suggestions. I'll take that back to Dr. Paul in just a moment, but Harish Damodaran joins us as well this evening. He's the Rural Affairs and Agriculture Editor with the Indian Express. Harish, just wanted a comment from you on what Samir Saran actually mentioned there as the first point on the need to have some kind of a social welfare package for India's most vulnerable sections. Now, you would have seen the pictures today at Bandra station in Mumbai and migrants, who have come from Bengal, Bihar, all parts of the country, desperate to go back home. Are you worried that we are going to see a repeat of these scenes in other cities as well if we meaning the government, doesn't step in urgently?
I think the crisis will be seen in the next 15, 16 days. We have to see how many people get the salaries for this month, in early May or something, See, I think probably most of the migrants, I don't know, maybe at least 80% would have got their salaries on April 1st or April 2nd, And instinctively they would have wanted to go home, right? I mean, when you're thrown out of your job, you don't want to be in your office, right? I mean, tomorrow if my office says that they cannot pay me my salary, and at the same time you insist that I stay in the office, I wouldn't like to, right? When I lose my job, I would like to go with my family, right? So I think right now it is a psychological nightmare which these people are going through. And probably we should have thought through this thing completely. I mean, in a proper way. I don't know why the government didn't think about this scenario. Definitely, I think the migrants could have been taken back home. I think the real crisis will be next month. There'll be no salary also. So how are you going to do this kind of a thing? And probably I don't know what stopped the government from straight away transferring, say, 10,000 rupees into the accounts of all these people. See, unlike in the rural areas, here these people can access whatever the ATM cards and all these things, right? I mean, here at least the ATM machines work here. It's not like the rural areas. So I think no thinking went into this entire thing, and I think the real crisis is going to be, on May 1st, May 2nd, etc. When there'll be no salaries also. We can
That's
assume
an
that about
important
80%
point.
of the salaries would have been paid for this month.
No, but Nidhi, what
and
happens?
which, yeah.
What happens to the peak in June? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But you were saying that you don't get it in May, but June might be worse. The peak will be in June. So the government just giving away money.
I think what Harish Damodaran is saying is that the first test will be actually on the 1st of May, when they may not get, most people may not get salaries, and before that we need to have some kind of plan in place. Dr. Paul, I'm out of time. Just one quick question to you before we go. On the other point Sameer Saran raised, the need to test more aggressively. Now, I know we're waiting for these kits to come from abroad, but are we going to see a significant ramping up of testing? Because that is something India does desperately need to do.
Well, the short answer is that yes, we are ramping up testing facilities, and also in the hotspot areas, the guidelines have been liberalized, and the ultimate guideline being that if there is a flu-like illness, you should be tested. That guideline is now available. So it has already been opened up. But remember, we did this in the past in a calibrated, structured way, and that has stood the test of time so far in terms of a good use of our resources. So don't worry about it. The 3 Indian companies at least are now making RT-PCR kits. More are on the pipeline. We will have enough testing facilities as we move forward, and we are clear that this pandemic is not over. We are prepared for the more challenging scenarios, and testing would be taken note of.
All right. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us this evening to give us different perspectives on all the different aspects of how this touches our lives and what this lockdown will mean for us. And of course, the bigger fight against the pandemic, which I think everyone is clear is going to be one that will go on post the lockdown as well. Lockdowns will not last forever, but the fight against this pandemic will have to last a bit longer than that. Thank you very much to all of you.